The massive crystalline chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its walls alive with shifting patterns of blue and gold light. Floating platforms carried delegates from 47 different species, each representing worlds that had earned their place through conquest, technological supremacy, or sheer survival against the galaxy's countless threats. Ambassador Vextar's serpentine form coiled around the central podium, his scaled hide gleaming under the chamber's ethereal glow. Forearms gestured dramatically as holographic displays materialized above the assembly, showing images of a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. "Behold," Vextar announced, his voice carrying the distinctive hiss of his species, "the latest applicants for membership in our glorious alliance, the humans of Earth." A wave of chittering, buzzing, and mechanical whirring filled the chamber as delegates accessed their translation matrices. The towering Nexari, beings of living, crystal whose bodies refracted light into rainbow cascades, shared data through direct neural links. Their thoughts sparkled like distant stars as they processed humanity's cultural files. The ethereal Vorthak drifted higher, their gaseous forms shifting between visible and translucent states. These ancient beings had witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen galactic civilizations, and their collective memory banks stored the wisdom of eons. They communicated through electromagnetic pulses that painted aurora-like patterns across their flowing bodies. The mechanical Zephyrite clicked and whirred in binary conversations, their chrome and titanium frames housing quantum processors that could calculate the orbital mechanics of entire star systems in nanoseconds. Red optical sensors glowed as they analyzed every byte of human data with ruthless efficiency. Council Prime Kethel raised himself on his massive platform, his gum, 3 eyes rotating independently to observe the entire assembly. The ancient leader belonged to the Kalari, a species that had ruled this sector for over 2 millennia. His skin bore the ritual scars of 100 conquered worlds, and his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Fascinating," he rumbled, pulling up holographic displays of human mythology. "These creatures claim their ancestors through lightning bolts from mountain peaks. They speak of warriors who could shatter stone with their bare hands and heroes who commanded the very seas." Delegate Zorthak of the Obsidian Hive burst into what passed for laughter among his species, a sound like grinding metal. "Look at this tale," he projected, sharing a human story across the chamber's network. "They claim one of their kind held up the entire sky to prevent it from crushing their world." The Nexari delegates sparkled with amusement, their crystalline forms chiming like wind bells. "Primitive mythology," their collective voice sang in harmonious tones. "They lack even basic stellar manipulation technology, yet they dream of gods who reshape reality." Dr. Minji Park sat rigid in the human delegation's cramped observation booth, a transparent bubble barely large enough for 3 beings. Her knuckles were white as she gripped the armrests of her seat, watching 47 alien species treat her civilization's greatest stories like children's fairy tales. The Korean scientist had spent 15 years preparing for this moment, learning 17 alien languages and studying galactic law until she could recite trade regulations in her sleep. She had dedicated her life to seeing humanity take its place among the stars, only to watch her species become the galaxy's newest comedy act. "Observe their so-called historical records," continued Vextar, displaying images of human warriors. "They speak of berserkers who felt no pain, of champions who could battle for days without rest. Yet their species averages barely 2 meters in height and possesses no natural armor, claws, or enhanced musculature." A Vorthak elder drifted closer to the displays, its gaseous form shimmering with ancient knowledge. "We have analyzed their genetic structure," it pulsed in electromagnetic bursts. "Standard carbon-based life, no psionic capabilities detected, no enhanced regeneration. Lifespan barely exceeds 1 standard century. By what measure do they consider themselves worthy of membership?" The Zephyrite War Coordinator, a towering construct of black metal and glowing circuits, transmitted data directly to the chamber's main display. "Combat analysis complete. Average human strength, insufficient for close combat with 96% of known species. Speed, below galactic standard. Durability, laughably fragile. They require artificial atmosphere to survive in space, and artificial gravity to function optimally. Laughter echoed through the chamber in dozens of different forms. The insectoid Vex delegates clicked their mandibles in rhythm. The aquatic Dipari splashed in their mobile tanks. Even the usually stoic stone beings of Petra Prime rumbled with what passed for humor among their kind. Perhaps, suggested a junior Nexari delegate, its crystalline voice tinkling with barely contained mirth, we should establish a special category for species whose greatest achievement is creative storytelling. Council Prime Kethel's 3 eyes fixed on the human delegation booth. Through the transparent barrier, he could see Dr. Minji Park's face flushing red, with what his species psychologists had identified as the human emotion of anger. The motion stands, he declared with ceremonial gravity that barely concealed his amusement. Humanity shall be granted probationary membership status. Perhaps their creative mythologies will provide entertainment during our longer deliberations. The vote was unanimous. 47 species agreed to grant humanity the galactic equivalent of a participation trophy. But in her tiny observation booth, Dr. Minji Park felt something stirring in her blood. Something old and patient and vast. Something that whispered in Korean words she had never learned, speaking of thunder that answered to no master and storms that bowed to human will. Something that remembered when legends walked among the stars. The derelict Nexus station drifted silently through the void sector, its massive hull scarred by cosmic radiation and micrometeor impacts. For 3,000 years, the ancient structure had been nothing more than a tomb, a monument to the mysterious precursor race that had vanished without explanation at the height of their galactic empire. Dr. Hyun adjusted his environmental suits. Oxygen flow as his team's exploration vessel docked with the station's main airlock. The Korean xenoarchaeologist had spent his entire career studying precursor ruins, but Nexus Station was the holy grail of his field. This wasn't just another outpost or research facility. This had been their capital, the seat of power for beings who had once ruled half the galaxy. Atmospheric readings are negative, reported his assistant Sujin, her voice crackling through the comm system. Whatever happened here, it sucked all the air out 3 millennia ago. The team moved through corridors that stretched for kilometers, their helmet lights cutting through absolute darkness. The walls were covered in precursor script, flowing symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the artificial illumination. Even after decades of study, human scholars could only translate fragments of their language. Yoon's Vorthak colleague, Mist Han, floated beside them in a specialized containment suit that maintained the gaseous being's preferred atmospheric mixture. The ancient ethereal being had volunteered for this expedition, specifically because its species had been among the few to witness the precursor civilization's final days. The energy signatures are strongest in the central chamber, Mist Han pulsed. Through the translation device. Whatever they left behind, it's been waiting for someone to find it. The team's Zephyrite member, designation Unit 77, scanned the walls with multiple sensor arrays built into its chrome chassis, detecting quantum resonance patterns consistent with precursor data storage technology. Crystalline matrix located approximately 200 meters ahead. They passed through chambers filled with technology that human science barely comprehended. Floating platforms still held their positions in defiance of gravity. Holographic displays flickered with dying power, showing star maps of galactic sectors that no longer existed. The air recyclers in their suits worked overtime to filter out microscopic particles of exotic matter that could disintegrate organic tissue on contact. The central chamber was a cathedral of impossible architecture. The ceiling stretched up into darkness beyond their light's reach, supported by pillars of living crystal that hummed with residual energy. In the center of the room, suspended in a web of energy conduits, hung a crystalline core the size of a small spacecraft. By the 7 moons, breathed Sujin, her voice filled with awe. It's beautiful. The data core pulsed with internal light, responding to their presence after 3,000 years of silence. Precursor technology had always been reactive to living consciousness. Their machines seemed to possess a form of artificial intuition that current galactic science couldn't explain. Hyun approached the artifact carefully, his scanner detecting energy levels that fluctuated wildly. "Unit 77, can you interface with it safely?" The Zephyrite extended a fiber optic cable from its chassis, connecting directly to one of the core's data ports. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber filled with blinding light as the artifact activated. The holographic projection materialized in the air above them, a precursor in the final moments of life. The being stood nearly 4 meters tall, its elongated limbs ending in 6-fingered hands that crackled with dying energy. Its face was eerily human-like, but stretched and refined in ways that spoke of millions of years of evolutionary divergence. "If you are receiving this message," the figure spoke in the melodic tones of ancient precursor, Unit 77's translation matrix struggling to keep up, "then our time has ended, and yours may be beginning." The projection flickered, showing damage to the recording matrix. The precursor's image wavered between solid and transparent as it continued its desperate warning. "We believed ourselves the masters of creation. We reshaped. Worlds commanded the fundamental forces, bent reality to our will. But we made a mistake, a grave error in judgment that cost us everything." The hologram displayed star charts showing the galaxy as it existed millennia ago. Hundreds of worlds glowed with precursor civilization, their empire spanning from the galactic core to the outer rim territories. "We underestimated," the figure gasped, its form growing more unstable. "The children of the third spiral arm, their world, small, blue, seemingly insignificant. We dismissed them as primitives, as storytellers spinning tales of impossible heroes." Hyun's blood ran cold as he watched the star charts zoom in on a specific sector. His scanner beeped softly as it identified the coordinates. But their legends are not myths, but memories. Genetic memories of what they once were, what they were designed to become. They are the inheritors of. The transmission shattered into static, leaving only fragmented images flickering in the air. Star charts, genetic sequences, mathematical formulas that hurt to look at directly. And through it all, the coordinates continued to flash on the display. Hyun's 3-fingered hand trembled as he compared the readings to his navigation computer. The numbers matched perfectly with a small yellow star in the outer spiral arm, a system that contained exactly 9 planets, the third of which was covered in liquid water and supported billions of human beings. "Impossible," whispered Mistan, its gaseous form rippling with confusion. "The humans are weak, fragile, their average lifespan is barely a century, their technology is primitive, their legends are just stories." But even as the Vorthak spoke, something was happening across the galaxy. In the depths of space, ancient monitoring satellites that had been dormant for millennia suddenly activated. Deep space sensors detected energy signatures emanating from human colonies, signatures that matched no known technology. On Kepler, station human miner Jin Yuk paused in his work as he heard whispers in a language that sounded like ancient Korean, but contained words that predated human civilization. The voices spoke of thunder that answered to no master and storms that bowed to mortal will. On the trading post at Proxima Centauri, Mechanic Yunji found herself understanding the quantum mechanics of a broken hyperdrive without ever studying the technology. Her hands moved with impossible precision, reshaping metal components as if they were clay. Throughout human space, people began experiencing dreams of impossible cities and memories that belonged to no human ancestor. Children spoke words in languages that had never existed on Earth, describing technologies that wouldn't be invented for centuries. The precursor warning echoed through the data core one final time before the crystal shattered into 1,000,000 fragments. They are coming home. In the ruins of Nexus Station, Dr. Hyun stared at the coordinates on his scanner, finally understanding why his species' application for galactic membership had been treated as a joke. The other races had been laughing at humanity's legends, never realizing they were genetic memories of a power that had once ruled the stars. And somewhere in the cosmic void, something vast and patient began to stir, responding to voices that had been calling for 3,000 years. The security feed from Colony Delta 7 played in slow motion across the massive display screen in the Human Defense Corps headquarters on Lunar Base. Commander Nari watched for the 15th time as Miner, Jinwoo casually lifted a 15-ton support beam that had collapsed during a seismic event. The man didn't strain, didn't grunt with effort. He simply grabbed the twisted metal and moved it aside like it weighed. Nothing. "Run the analysis again," Nari ordered, her dark eyes never leaving the screen. Dr. Young-ho's fingers danced across his holographic interface, pulling up medical scans and genetic profiles. The middle-aged scientist had been studying human physiology for 20 years, and everything he was seeing violated the fundamental laws of biology. "Commander, according to our records, Jinwoo is a 42-year-old mining engineer from Busan. Average height, average build. His last physical showed normal bone density, standard muscle mass, typical human cardiovascular capacity. There's no way he should be able to lift 15 tons. But the footage didn't lie. Security cameras from multiple angles showed the same impossible event. Other miners stood frozen in shock as their colleague performed a feat that should have required a mechanical exoskeleton or industrial lifting equipment. "Show me the Frontier Station incident," Nari commanded. The display switched to external camera feeds from the commercial space station orbiting Kepler 442b. The electromagnetic storm had appeared without warning, a massive solar flare from the system's unstable star that had caught 3 vessels in its path. The Vorthak science ship had been torn apart instantly, its shields useless against the cosmic fury. A Nixari trading vessel managed exactly 4 seconds before its crystalline hull shattered into a million glittering fragments. Then came pilot Sora in her cargo hauler, a ship that was basically a flying warehouse with engines attached. As the storm engulfed her vessel, something extraordinary happened. The electromagnetic chaos that had destroyed 2 advanced alien ships simply parted around her hull like water flowing around a stone. "Computer, magnify Section 7 Alpha," Nari ordered. The image zoomed in on the cargo hauler's cockpit. Through the reinforced transparency, they could see Sora at the controls, her hands steady on the flight stick. But it wasn't just her calm that caught their attention. It was the way reality seemed to bend around her. The deadly energy streamers that should have fried every circuit in her ship curved away, creating a perfect sphere of calm in the cosmic storm. "She's not just flying through it," whispered Dr. Young-ho. "It's like the storm is avoiding her on purpose." The reports kept flooding in from every corner of human space. On the mining station at Titan, worker Daeho had fallen into a vat of liquid methane and walked out unharmed, his body somehow adapting to the lethal cold. On the agricultural world of New Seoul, Farmer Mirai had ended a 3-month drought by simply asking the sky for rain, and the clouds had answered. But perhaps most disturbing was the footage from the Outer Rim military base, where Private Taemin had been undergoing routine combat training. The exercise pitted human soldiers against holographic opponents programmed to match the combat capabilities of various alien species. Commander Nari watched as Taemin moved through the training course like liquid lightning. The young soldier dodged plasma bolts that traveled at nearly the speed of light, his body twisting through space in ways that defied human anatomy. When a holographic Kalari warrior, programmed with the strength to crush titanium, struck at him, Taemin simply wasn't there anymore. "Freeze frame at 12.7 seconds, she ordered. The image stopped, showing Taemin in mid-leap between 2 platforms separated by 20 meters of empty space. No human should be able to jump that distance, especially not while carrying full combat gear. "Computer, show me his movement tracking data." Red lines appeared on the screen, tracing Taemin's path through the exercise. The pattern was impossible. He had moved faster than the base's sensors could accurately track, appearing to teleport between positions. "Commander," Dr. Young-ho's voice was barely a whisper. "I've been comparing these incidents with historical data. Similar events have been reported throughout human history, but we always dismissed them as exaggerations or myths." "What kind of events? Warriors who could fight for days without rest? Shamans who controlled the weather, monks who could heal fatal wounds with touch, heroes who performed impossible feats of strength. He paused, his face pale. What if they weren't myths? What if some humans have always had these abilities, but they've been dormant? As if responding to their conversation, alerts began flooding into the command center. Reports from Earth itself, humanity's ancient homeworld, was experiencing phenomena that defied explanation. The stone circles of Britain were humming with harmonic frequencies that resonated through bedrock for hundreds of kilometers. Acoustic sensors detected voices singing in languages that predated any known human civilization. The burial mounds of Korea glowed with soft phosphorescent light that showed no source of energy. Ancient temples across the planet were broadcasting electromagnetic signals into space, signals that matched frequencies last detected from precursor ruins. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Ji-yeon from her station, "we're receiving reports from 17 different archaeological sites. Every ancient monument on Earth is active. The energy readings are off the charts." Commander Nari stood before the main display, watching real-time satellite feeds of her homeworld. Stonehenge pulsed with blue-white light. The pyramids of Giza cast geometric shadows that moved independently of the sun. The temple complex at Angkor Wat resonated with harmonic frequencies that made nearby wildlife behave strangely. Birds flying in perfect formations, predators lying down with prey as if responding to some universal harmony. "Commander, Doctor." Young-ho approached with a data pad in his trembling hands. "I've been analyzing the genetic samples from all the affected humans. There's something in their DNA, sequences that don't match any known human genetic markers. It's like there's another species' genetic code woven into their cellular structure. What kind of genetic code? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's activating. The dormant sequences are coming online, rewriting their cellular structure from the inside out. Their muscle density is increasing. Their neural pathways are forming new connections. Their bodies are adapting to process energy in ways that current medical science says is impossible." On the main screen, another alert flashed red, this time from the Galactic Monitoring Station at Alpha Centauri. Long-range sensors had detected something massive moving in the depths of interstellar space, something that had been dormant for thousands of years, but was now heading toward human-controlled space. "What is it?" Nari asked. The sensor operator's voice was tight with fear. "Unknown, Commander, but it's big, really big. The mass readings suggest something the size of a small moon, and it's moving under its own power." In the depths of space, ancient precursor monitoring stations that had been silent for millennia suddenly activated. Automated systems began broadcasting. A message across subspace frequencies. A message in a language that only one species in the galaxy could understand. On Earth, in the ancient temples and stone circles, voices began to whisper in harmony. Human voices, speaking words that had never been taught but were somehow remembered. The sleeping giant was stirring, and after 3,000 years of slumber, humanity was finally beginning to remember what they truly were. The galaxy's weakest species was awakening, and the universe would never be the same. The first warning came from the Deep Space Monitoring Station at the edge of the Vega system. Sensor operator Kyung-ho was finishing his night shift when the gravitational detectors started screaming alerts that made no sense. Objects were emerging from what appeared to be empty space, massive forms that shouldn't exist according to any known physics. "Command, this is Deep Space Station 7, he transmitted, his voice tight with confusion. "I'm reading massive objects materializing at coordinates 77 Alpha, but that's impossible. There's nothing out there but vacuum." Within hours, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The Devourer fleet had arrived. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. The alien vessels existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that current galactic science couldn't even detect. They phased in and out of reality like living nightmares, their hulls writhing with geometries that hurt to look at directly. Some appeared to be constructed from crystallized darkness itself, while others seemed to be made of compressed space-time that bent light around their edges. The Galactic Council's response was swift and coordinated. The mighty Nexari battle cruisers, each one a kilometer-long crystal of devastating firepower, formed the first line of defense. Their prismatic weapons could shatter moons, and their shields had withstood the combined assault of entire star systems. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Kexthul of the Nexari First Fleet transmitted his final message as his flagship's crystalline hull began to dissolve. "They're not attacking our ships, they're rewriting reality around us. Our weapons pass through them like they're not even there, but their touch unmakes everything it contacts." The Vorthak tried to retreat into higher dimensional space, using their mastery of quantum physics to escape into realms where the Devourers couldn't follow. But the enemy followed them anyway, hunting them through dimensions that shouldn't have been accessible to any physical being. The mechanical Zephyrite calculated over 14 million different combat scenarios in the first 3 minutes of engagement. Every single projection ended with total annihilation. Their quantum processors, capable of predicting the movement of entire galaxies, couldn't even comprehend how the Devourer weapons functioned. Panic spread through civilized space. As the reports came in, entire star systems were going dark. Worlds that had stood for millions of years were simply ceasing to exist, not destroyed but unmade, as if they had never been real in the first place. But something extraordinary was happening to humanity. Captain Ji-hoon was on the bridge of the destroyer Hangul when the first Devourer vessel materialized near Earth's outer defense perimeter. The massive alien construct twisted through space like a living shadow, its presence causing reality to ripple and bend around it. "All weapons, fire at will!" Ji-hoon shouted. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew conventional weapons would be useless. The plasma torpedoes passed through the enemy vessel like it was made of smoke. That's when the impossible happened. Ji-hoon felt electricity building in his chest, crackling along his spine like liquid fire. Without conscious thought, he raised his hand toward the main view screen, and lightning erupted from his fingertips. Not the weak electrical discharge of a human nervous system, but true lightning, cosmic fury that tore through the vacuum of space and struck the Devourer vessel like the wrath of ancient gods. The alien ship recoiled, its twisted form solidifying as if forced back into normal reality by the electromagnetic assault. "Captain," whispered his navigator Sun-ho, staring at his commanding officer in shock. "How did you—" But Ji-hoon was already calling down another bolt, his eyes blazing with power that had been sleeping in human DNA for thousands of years. On the medical frigate Nightingale, Dr. Soyeon was treating wounded soldiers evacuated from the first wave of attacks when she heard voices that shouldn't exist. The spirits of fallen warriors were standing beside their bodies, speaking in languages that predated recorded history. "Tell my brother I died with honor," whispered the ghost of a Nexari Marine, its crystalline form shimmering with residual life energy. Soyeon found herself responding in the same ancient tongue, serving as a bridge between the living and the dead. The fallen soldiers shared tactical information about the Devourers, weaknesses that only those who had faced them in battle could know. In the engine room of the battleship Sejong, Chief Engineer Do-hyun was desperately trying to repair hull breaches caused by Devourer weapons when his hands began to glow with inner fire. The twisted metal that had been impossible to fix suddenly became malleable under his touch, reshaping itself like clay as he willed it back into perfect form. "The hull is regenerating," reported his assistant in amazement. "Sir, the entire section is rebuilding itself." On Earth, the awakening was even more dramatic. Ancient sites that had hummed with power for weeks suddenly erupted with energies that could be seen from orbit. People who made pilgrimages to these locations emerged fundamentally changed, their human limitations burned away to reveal something far more powerful beneath. At Stonehenge, descendants of Celtic bloodlines found they could command the elements themselves. Rain fell at their request, winds obeyed their will, and the earth itself responded to their touch. In the temples of Korea, visitors discovered they could manipulate gravity, walking on walls and ceilings as easily as floors. Their bodies had learned to bend space-time the way their ancestors once bent iron. At the burial mounds of ancient warriors, some humans manifested the berserker rage of legend, not mindless fury, but controlled ferocity that could shatter steel. with bare hands and allowed them to fight for days without rest or pain. The descendants of different cultures manifested different abilities, as if their genetic memories were tied to the lands their ancestors had walked. Those from Nordic regions commanded ice and storm. Mediterranean descendants controlled fire and earth. Asian lineages found mastery over water and wind. Ambassador Minji stood in the ruins of the Galactic Council chambers, feeling power coursing through her veins like molten starlight. Around her, the representatives of 47 species cowered in fear as the Devourer fleet consumed world after world. "The legends," she whispered, understanding flooding through her consciousness like a dam bursting. They were never legends at all. They were memories, genetic memories of what we used to be. The truth was staggering. Humanity wasn't a young species that had evolved on a backwater world. They were the inheritors of the precursor legacy, the children of beings who had once ruled the galaxy with power that bordered on godhood. The myths and legends weren't stories. They were racial memories of abilities that had been dormant for millennia, waiting for the right moment to awaken. As the Devourer fleet advanced toward the core worlds, humanity finally remembered what they truly were. The galaxy's weakest species was about to become its salvation, and the universe itself would tremble at the sound of human voices raised in ancient songs of power. The sleeping giant had awakened, and it was time to reclaim their birthright among the stars. Dr. Seojun's hands trembled as he stared at the genetic analysis results displayed across 3 holographic screens in his laboratory aboard the research station Keomzongdai. What he had discovered would change everything. Humanity thought they knew about themselves. The DNA samples taken from humans exhibiting impossible abilities all contained the same anomaly, genetic sequences that didn't belong to any known terrestrial species. But when he compared them to fragments of precursor genetic material recovered from ancient ruins, the match was perfect. "It can't be," he whispered, running the analysis for the 100th time. But the quantum computers confirmed what his mind refused to accept. Woven into every human cell were dormant genetic instructions, written by the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. The precursors hadn't simply vanished 3,000 years ago, they had encoded their essence into a primitive species on a forgotten world, creating humanity as their ultimate insurance policy against extinction. Every human myth, every legend of impossible heroes, every story of gods walking among mortals, they were genetic memories struggling to surface across generations. Thor's hammer that could level mountains wasn't mythology. It was racial memory of gravity manipulation technology. The Greek gods who commanded storms weren't fiction. They were echoes of humans who could control electromagnetic fields at the quantum level. The Asian legends of warriors who could fight armies alone weren't exaggerations. They were memories of humans whose bodies could process energy in ways that made them essentially indestructible. As Dr. Seojun transmitted his findings across human space, the final battle for galactic civilization was beginning. The Devourer fleet had consumed 17 star systems and was advancing toward the galactic core, where billions of beings cowered in terror. Every weapon, every strategy, every desperate gambit employed by the galaxy's greatest military minds had failed. The alien invaders existed partially outside normal reality, making them immune to conventional attacks. But humanity was no longer bound by conventional limitations. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of his destroyer as it led a fleet of 300 human vessels toward the Devourer armada. Around him, his crew had undergone transformations that defied belief. Navigator Sunho could plot courses through folded space without computers. Weapons Officer Hana could guide plasma bolts with her mind across impossible distances. Engineer Do-hyun had merged with the ship's systems, becoming a living interface between human consciousness and cosmic technology. "All ships, this is Admiral Ji-hoon," he broadcast across the fleet, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated through subspace itself. "Remember who we are. Remember what we were meant to become." The human fleet didn't engage the Devourers with conventional tactics. Instead, they did something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. They began to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in the space around them. farmer Minsu, who had spent his life growing rice on the agricultural world of New Jeju, now commanded the battleship Harvest Moon. As devourer vessels materialized around his ship, he reached out with senses that extended beyond normal space-time and simply changed the nature of reality in their vicinity. Where the alien ships had existed partially in other dimensions, Minsu forced them to become fully real, stripping away their ability to phase between states of existence. The devourers suddenly found themselves bound by the same physical laws that governed all matter, making them vulnerable to human weapons that had evolved beyond mere technology. Merchant Jihye, who had spent 20 years hauling cargo between star systems, discovered she could command forces that made stellar engineering seem simple. Standing in the observation deck of her converted freighter, she called down cosmic storms that tore through devourer formations like paper. Solar wind became her weapon, magnetic fields bent to her will, and gravity itself answered her commands. The battle raged across light years of space, but it wasn't really a battle in any conventional sense. Humanity wasn't fighting the devourers. They were asserting their true nature as the inheritors of cosmic power. Every human ship became a nexus of controlled reality manipulation, bending the universe to their collective will. Soldier Taemin, who had moved faster than sensors could track during training exercises, now commanded time itself. He aged devourer vessels into cosmic dust, while keeping his own forces locked in temporal bubbles, where seconds stretched into hours, giving them infinite time to plan and react. The transformation wasn't limited to those in space. On worlds throughout human territory, ordinary people discovered extraordinary abilities. Teachers became reality architects, reshaping matter at the molecular level. Children spoke words that made flowers bloom in vacuum and brought rain to desert worlds. Elderly grandparents remembered songs that could heal the dying and words that could part the barriers between dimensions. The devourer fleet, which had seemed unstoppable against conventional forces, began to retreat. For the first time in their existence, they faced beings who could match their ability to exist outside normal physics. But where the devourers consumed and destroyed, humans created and restored. When the final devourer ship was either destroyed or driven back into whatever dark realm had spawned them, the galaxy fell silent. Trillions of beings watched as human fleets hung motionless in space, crackling with barely contained cosmic energy. The surviving delegates of the Galactic Council gathered in the ruins of their former chambers, now rebuilt by human engineers, who had learned to reshape matter with thought alone. Representatives of 47 species knelt before Ambassador Minji, who stood before them radiating power that made their instruments overload. She had been transformed by the awakening. Her human limitations burned away to reveal something far greater beneath. Energy cascaded around her like liquid starlight, and when she spoke, her words carried harmonics that resonated through subspace itself. 3 months ago you laughed at our legends, she said, her voice carrying the weight of cosmic authority. How you dismissed our stories as primitive mythology. You granted us membership out of pity, treating us like children who needed galactic charity. The alien delegates trembled as waves of power emanated from the human ambassador. Around the chamber, other transformed humans stood like living gods, their presence warping reality in subtle ways that made the air itself sing with potential. We tried to share our truth with you, Minji continued. We told you stories of our ancestors who commanded storms and spoke with the dead. We sang songs of heroes who could shatter mountains and healers who could restore life itself. You called them myths. Council Prime Kethel, his 3 eyes dimmed with shame, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. We did not understand. Forgive us. We see now that humanity was always more than we comprehended. Ambassador Minji's expression softened slightly, the cosmic fires around her settling into gentle radiance. We don't seek your worship or your fear. We never did. We only wanted to be heard, to be understood for what we truly are. She gestured to the rebuilt chamber around them, where human technology, indistinguishable from magic, had restored beauty, to the ruins left by the Devourer attack. The precursors were our ancestors, and we are their children. For 3,000 years we carried their legacy in our blood, waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need us to remember who we were, meant to become. The transformed humans began to disperse, returning to their ships and worlds to help rebuild what the Devourers had destroyed. But the galaxy would never be the same. The species that had been mocked as harmless storytellers now stood as the inheritors of cosmic power, the guardians of civilizations that had once dismissed them as irrelevant. As Ambassador Minji prepared to leave the chamber, she turned back to address the humbled council one final time. Perhaps next time someone shares their stories with you, you'll have the wisdom to listen. Because sometimes legends are just truth waiting for the right moment to awaken. The galaxy had mocked human legends for being impossible. Now those legends ruled the stars, and the universe itself bowed to the will of Earth's children. The Endi,